Hi, I'm Daniel, and I continue my series of ranking Disney films for each era with the Silver Age, which is Cinderella up to the Jungle Book. There was a bigger gap between this and my last video on this topic, because I decided to do a video on the package era before my Golden Age one came out. And there is 8 films in this era to discuss compared to the previous 5 or 6, so this will likely be a long video. I have to rewatch all the films for the video and then discuss the era of films as a whole, so I'll probably only do one every 3 months for this series. There isn't as much history for this era compared to the previous two. Disney has started making normal-ish films again after the war. Let's see what are the worst and best Silver Age films. 8. The Sword and the Stone. This is the worst. The worst film from this era, the worst so far, and a contender for Walt Disney's worst. Where to start? The story is abysmal. It is supposed to be about the wizard Merlin training a young King Arthur to be king, but it's just him turning into insect animal a 15-minute interval from the story. It feels more like a TV show season with introductory episodes, fish episodes, squirrel episodes, Madame Mim episodes, and the forced in Sword and the Stone finale. I don't know why this film is titled The Sword and the Stone. It is only in the opening of the last 10 minutes. Shouldn't it be called Merlin Arthur or something like that, which represents the film better? Or maybe most of the film should have been the first act of a completely different film. At the time of scripting, I watched it a week ago, but I still can't remember much of note other than just a bunch of pit stops. The characters are beyond unforgettable, especially the main character who is extremely boring. Merlin and the Apple are sometimes entertaining when they aren't in generic teacher mode. There is also your favorite characters. The songs are mostly uninteresting, aside from the squirrel one, which I hate. The idea of a film around the Sword and the Stone could work, but what this film focuses on ruins the film. And this was the last one that released when Walt was alive, even though he still worked on most of the Jungle Book and Aristocats. It's a bad movie, and I remember having more thoughts, but I just want to get to the good films quicker. Also, the owl used to be human, and that is why he talks and why he doesn't want to go back. That is my Sword in the Stone theory. 7. Cinderella. This is still a bad film. It is supposed to be about the relationship between Cinderella and the prince, but they barely interact. Snow White's credit at least isn't about the prince, more about the dwarfs and the evil queen. Cinderella is a boring character here. While I agree that she is abused and not a whiny princess like some claim, unlike Ariel, but she isn't an interesting character in any way. Lady Tremaine is a pretty decent villain, but the story doesn't give much things to happen to make her a good one. Something I didn't expect rewatching is how much screen time the mice gets. This has roughly the same percentage of the film being cat and mouse antics than the recent Tom and Jerry movie. Literally pauses the film to waste time on them, especially in the final 10 minutes where there's a new conflict to make it feel like more happened. The songs are fine but not memorable. I know this is popular, but I do not like this. It had potential in many areas, but the execution drastically failed. It saved Disney money, but not in quality. 6. Lady and the Tramp. Okay, this is the best out of the 3 bad Silver Age film, but it is really dragged out. It spends 20 minutes for the story to somewhat start, and the rest of the film still could be shortened. I know practically all old Disney films are dragged out, but this is an extreme of that, and it could be half what it is. It isn't awful, some of the songs are good, the characters are varied enough, and the animation going widescreen is a massive improvement over what came before. It is just another boring mess of a film that I'm not a fan of. I think I said what I need to say here. 5. Peter Pan. I remember that when I first saw it I liked this film, and it still has a lot of great aspects. The characters here are good, especially the villains Captain Hook and Mr. Spee. Peter Pan is kind of unlikable sometimes, but it isn't a major issue. I like the main 3 kids and some of the ideas presented. A lot of the problems are in the story. It feels too bland and like the story is over way too quickly. The whole opening of the film is just that angry man taking it out on his wife and kids, and makes that part of the film outdated. Him acknowledging he went too far later doesn't quite fix it. And speaking of outdated things, racism. It isn't the only old Disney film with this problem, but Dumbo Lady Tramp have animals that represents them groups, so kids won't notice. This doesn't have this, and the racist aspects take up a lot of the movie's middle. I wouldn't call Peter Pan a bad film, it's fine, but it is better yet than the past. For the type of storytelling being targeted at young children, while also teaching negative messages. I don't think the problematic elements are the worst thing in the world, and it is completely worth nothing, but it doesn't have much lasting power now, and it probably have yes in 10 or so years. When watching this movie, all I can think is that Peter Pan Goes Wrong is better. Seriously, look it up. 4. The Jungle Book. This is unusual for no Disney film, but this feels too rushed and not dragged out. It doesn't really have much breathing room to take in things happening. This is a good film. The story does feel like it has a bunch of pit stops, but it is more tied together than The Sword and the Stone. The live action remake is massively superior, but that is subject for another time. However, it makes the art this film's good aspects seem worse, like the characters. Maugi is fine, but he's a bit too much incompetent here. The You is good, but I prefer the more cynical one in the remake. In both movies, Bagheera is about the same, except he feels more like a joint main character in the original. The songs are great, but only two are that memorable, honestly. The setting of the jungle is great, yes, suited here, but the story is weak, and the climax is pretty awful. Constantly comparing to the superior 2016 film made me think more negative on this, but it is still a good film, and I understand why it's a favourite for a lot of people. It deserves its place on the upper half of the Silver Age. 3. Alice in Wonderland. Here we have got a good film that isn't anything extraordinary. Wonderland is a unique location, and the story is fine for what it is, even though what it is a weird adventure over a proper movie. It does feel like a bunch of characters who only appear in their part and the end. They are entertaining mostly, but doesn't feel well together. I don't have that much to say about this movie. It is good, but it can't be anything more than that. For its setup, the 2010 live-action sequel remake-ish movie is better because it breaks away from that storytelling style. 2. 101 Dalmatians. I think it's a great film. It has a nice stylistic choice of art style and storytelling, which makes this executed superbly. How it was executed is really important. If this was portrayed the way the Lady and the Tramp was, it likely wouldn't be good. The characters are great here, and the atmosphere is very pleasant to watch. I'm not a big fan of how the last part of 101 Dalmatians comes to the escape story, creates a change, but it still does a good job at doing that. This was the first Disney film to use the Xerox process, which is black outlines and a more scratchy look. And it works best here for the type of film this is, while for most of the rest it just feels like a way to save money. I wish animation studios played around with variety looking films next to each other, depending on the type of said film. One of the best older Disney films. 1. Sleeping Beauty. Through rewatching these films, so far my opinion hasn't changed from the rest of them. I get ideas of a point to the film and why I do or don't like them, but it stays practically the same in quality, except for Sleeping Beauty. I thought it would be 3 or 4 on this ranking, which is still good, but this remains a solid film by modern standards. The story is very simple but okay, and it works with that. The animation looks great for the times, but the colouring and the signs. As for the characters, you can argue Aurora and Philip aren't that interesting, but you don't get that much screen time compared to the fairies, who are the actual main characters. This film manages the time to get effectively, and have a believable bond between the three fairies and Aurora over these 16 years. Even with their little screen time, Aurora and Philip are still better than Cinderella, Snow White and the Princess in them films. Maleficent is a good villain, and her minions don't overstay their welcome. On top of all of that, it's actually entertaining to watch, and it wasn't often thinking how young is the epic Euro films around this time. I still prefer the best Golden Age films to this, but they are padded out for certain great moments. More things to say, this film is a misunderstanding well, with Aurora and Philip meeting each other not knowing their royalty, because it isn't annoying and clearly has irony to it. In the climactic fight scene, it doesn't treat Philip as weaker for needing the fairies' help, it is just them working together healthy, and that makes the climax enjoyable. The comedy here works well, like how Maleficent's minions were still looking for a baby all 16 years, which explains how she wasn't found until then. It isn't amazing, I have been overpraised here slightly. It has feels like the whole making the kingdom sleep is a pointless extra plot detail. And there is logical issues, but it is still the best Silver Age film. In conclusion, here is the tier list with 2 A-tier films, 2 B-tier, 1 C-tier and 3 D-tier, which isn't really the best. I will just outright say that Silver Age is overrated, having mostly forgettable films that are beyond. While there are 2 I would rewatch without needing a reason, there aren't any in my top 10 or even 15. It is better than the package era, but I am more forgiving to that era because it was affected by a world war, and their films try more risk. Considering how many films were in all the eras except the first 2, these videos are getting long ones because of how young I discuss individual categories compared to how I normally do. I will get to the Bronze Age eventually, but don't expect it anytime soon, because I don't want to binge through these films. I will still make other videos regarding Disney stuff, like my recent Big Hero 6 analysis. The end.